Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Raro Boda Lot 4 Wash Processed Ethiopia from Memli Coffee Lab. And there's the bag right there. And Memli, based out of Marcos, California, and they were originally a suggestion to us by Akavia8. So shout out to and thank you to Akavia8 for the suggestion. This coffee was also featured in our most recent blind taste test rankings video, where it finished first place out of 6 coffees on that day. While I had no familiarity with this coffee roaster going into that video, I definitely had high expectations for this coffee, as wash processed Ethiopians tend to perform pretty well in those blind taste test videos. But in addition to that, this is a Guji coffee. Guji coffees tend to come out a little bit more peachy, and as somebody that's a big fan of peachy coffees, that definitely made it one of the favorites to finish first place. And it's going to be interesting to see if it maintained its status as my favorite of those 6 coffees, as this right here is day 28. And Memli does include cards with all of their coffees, and those cards have brew guides, and the brew guide they had for this coffee was a 15:1 water to coffee ratio, brewed at 203 degrees Fahrenheit, and truth be told, I liked every recipe I used, so that one worked well. Our standard recipe worked well, and brew method didn't particularly seem to matter too much, but I liked the V60 a little bit more with this coffee. So V60, which indicates a more medium fine grind. Memli is a light medium American for the roast profile. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. Day 10, first impression, and it was in that blind taste test day, and it came out very vintage Guji in the sense that it was clear, prominent, and pronounced peach from that first impression. There was a slight bit of this citric aspect to complement that as well, but for the most part, it was just really heavy on the peachy side of things, which is a great start for me. So quite nice first impression, really liked it. Day 12, yet again, a very peach-forward cup of coffee, as there's definitely a slight bit of this, well, fresh cut fruits secondary factor to the cup as well, but the cup's really dominated by the peachy aspect right from the get-go. So even then, I think they have a melon flavor note listed on here. I could see that, much more fresh cut fruits than just the peach to it, but it's just clean and sweet in general. So nice Chemex day, enjoyed this coffee. We continue on to day 14 as I ran it through the Chemex again, and as I've kind of mentioned in some other videos, there seemed to be some brewing issues with the water that I was using for a little bit. So this one also felt like a throwaway day, as this one really skewed heavy in the citric direction, so I wasn't able to get as much peach from this, but I figured maybe there was a little bit of brewing error as I had issues with other coffees. That's what the brewing error did with this. It was a water issue. So on day 16, we went back and it was the same as it had been on the previous days, with the exception of that brewing error, as it was extremely high on the peach yet again. Very clear stone fruit in general, very much the fresh cut stone fruit, very much that peachy aspect to it. So wonderful day, wonderful cup of coffee. We continue on to day 18 as it remains consistent in that sense, with a little bit of improvement overall, as I'm seeing a sugary peach right in the finish. And that's the best thing I can say about this coffee, is let it finish. Once you let this coffee finish, it just has this really sharp burst of stone fruit finish to it. It is wonderful, it is clear, it is dominant in that aspect. Some additional characteristics include some additional fresh cut fruit. As mentioned, there's this slight kind of, what do they describe it, melon aspect. You could definitely see that. And in addition to that, a slight citric aspect too. But for the most part, those things are very much secondary and tertiary factors to the really dominant peachiness. Day 20, another peachy cup of coffee, and this time it's even a little bit delicate bodied as well. And I ran this one through the V60, slight bit of florality to complement the fruit complexity, with a fair bit of this citric acidity cooling off into much more of that sugary peach. I'm telling you, once you let this coffee kind of cool down and finish, it has just so much peach in it. Day 22, cup continues to see that consistent peach fruit bomb, high on the clarity, high in the sweetness, slight bit of added florality, as well as the slight citrus. All of those components have been consistent, but I keep seeing the peachiness just increasing in this cup of coffee, which was already a peachy cup of coffee to begin with, so really nice in that sense. Day 25, last day we have, and continues to be just the peach forward fruit bomb. I like the fact that at no point did the peachiness from this coffee ever taper off. If anything, you just saw it continue to increase, and while it probably peaked at the day 20 mark, it never really dropped off from that point going forward, as there's a slight bit of citrus as well, some of those other fresh cut fruit characteristics to it, but when you're really just tasting that super forward peachy aspect, there isn't as much of the other characteristics to it that are as notable or prominent. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. And I don't think it'll come as a surprise to anybody that we have one level 5 and what that level 5 is, as it's the stone fruit, as this is a complete peach bomb, if I haven't made that clear at this point, as it is super peachy forward in that aspect. But the other things we must look at, the level 4s we have cleanliness level 4. It doesn't quite reach that level 5 mark, but it's very rare that anything like this would reach a level 5 mark. Don't get me wrong, it's really clean, it's on the higher side of the cleanliness, and definitely justified at that level 4 mark. The finish, as I kind of mentioned, it has a really peachy finish to it. Not overly dominant, not overbearing, but definitely pronounced, so definitely justified there at that level 4. Sweetness level 4, and I think the one interesting thing I saw was I looked at their card for what they had, and they had the sweetness kind of moderate, and I could see that. But with that being said, I think it's sweet enough to justify the level 4. So while they only have it about 7 out of 10, yeah, that seems about right, level 4. They do have the fruit at the maximum, and I can definitely see that, as the peachiness in this coffee is really high. They have moderate acidity, I agree with them on that. Lower body, I agree with them on that. So I haven't looked at this until just now. Let's run through the rest of our tasting wheel anyway. So body, as I kind of mentioned, it is a little bit more delicate bodied, so that might be a detracting factor from some people. Even brewed through the V60, it's a little bit more delicate bodied in that sense. Citrus fruit, moderate, level 3. Yeah, I don't think it was quite as pronounced, but when the cup of coffee is this peach dominant, the other aspects to it, that slight melon aspect, which is where the berry fruit is going to be a little lower, as the stone fruit was just so dominant that those aspects are just more moderate when compared to the stone fruit. Anything else really worth noting? We have a couple of level 1s. The only thing that really, we actually have one level 1. Most everything else is at a level 2. It's that chocolate, which I didn't get any of in this coffee, and you probably wouldn't expect any. Florality, moderate, level 3. Yeah, as I kind of mentioned, I think that there's some underrated white floral aspects to this coffee, and the acidity is very moderate, which is a nice selling point to me. It's a little bit of this citric acidity, but given that these are all tertiary, even 4th level factors compared to the peachiness of this coffee, you can tell that I was really enjoying the way that this coffee came out and the way that this tasting wheel looks. Alright, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. This is a classic Gucci. I can't remember the last time I had something that was this really Gucci forward. A lot of the more recent wash processed Ethiopian coffees don't tend to come out this peachy, but this one right here was a peach bomb right from the start and all the way through the finish. So for those reasons, it was one of my favorite wash processed Ethiopian coffees I've had this year, and I'm actually really surprised by it. Typically what happens when an Ethiopian coffee finishes first place in those blind taste test videos is I can never seem to replicate that same sort of experience, or it doesn't really improve that much from that first impression. However, this one was the one that improved the most from the first time I tried it all the way to the end, and given that it was my favorite cup of coffee from that first try, that really goes to show just how much I was enjoying this coffee. Maybe a fringe contender for an honorable mention spot, as I really love the peachy aspect to it, but if I have to be really nitpicky, I would say that maybe the citric acidity was a little bit of a turnoff. Maybe it wasn't quite as sweet as I was hoping, but that's being super nitpicky, as any sort of peach bombs are going to be a really enjoyable cup of coffee, which kind of leads me to who I would suggest this coffee to. People that enjoy their classic vintage wash processed Ethiopians that taste like peaches. They're Gucci coffees, because this one right here epitomized what Gucci coffees were once upon a time and can still continue to be. As mentioned, haven't had a Gucci like this in quite a while, but this one just radiated peach from start to finish, and that's something I really love about Gucci coffees, and why oftentimes a Gucci coffee will attract my interest much more than a lot of other Ethiopian coffees in general. For the most part though, I think I'll leave this review at that. If you've by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, I would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Raro Boda Lot 4 Wash Processed Ethiopia from Memli Coffee Lab. Thank you for watching.